What's up, everybody? I'm Matt.
And I'm Beth.
And today we're going to be reviewing the interior in the 2024 Volkswagen Atlas. So the Atlas gets a refresh here for 2024. It's the second refresh. It had one back in 2021, but this is still essentially the same vehicle as it was back in 2018 when it debuted. Now, it has a really nice new interior, and that's one of the biggest upgrades for the Atlas here. Otherwise, it's just a new engine and some new styling on the front and the back. And I have a full different review for how it drives and all that, and I'll link that at the end of this one. But as far as this interior goes, it's really impressive. I think they really heavily upgraded it, and it's now, in my opinion, one of the plushest ones in the segment, and it's just really nice. And it makes a statement at night, especially with the wood having the backlit Atlas logo and the ambient lighting and everything. It's just a really cool look.
Yeah, it's definitely nicely refreshed, especially because it has all of these nice new textiles and textures. You know, you have your soft leatherette, you have your piano black plastic, which, yes, does get a ding from me. And then you have this wood grain. I don't know if it's actual wood because it does feel like really plasticky, but it does kind of have that grainy feeling to it. It's no big deal if you're not really touching it all the time or worrying about it. It does look like it's wood, so it looks really pretty. But yes, dinging on the piano black plastic. Come on now, it's right next to the cup holders. It's all next to all of your touch points. I just don't like it. They could have put the wood here and they didn't.
Yeah, and the tech is also the one other big sticking point with this vehicle that will be a deal breaker for some, because you have like no physical controls for climate, and basically everyone else in this segment gives you physical climate controls still. This has everything in the screen. Everything is a few taps away. It's not at the end of the world, and if you really like the Atlas, it's something you can live with. But, you know, that's the one thing that makes this really sleek, but also is going to hurt functionality a little bit.
Yeah, especially when you are used to having all of those buttons and it's just that one touch control, you know where it is, everything like that. But with this, having to go into the screen and figuring everything out, it's just a little bit more annoying if that's something that you love.
And so, first off, though, we'll get into the screen more in a little bit, but first off, these seats are one of the highlights, I think, in my opinion. So you have these perforated Vienna leather seats here in the SEL Premium R line that we're in here, which is a fully loaded one. This one, by the way, is about $54,000. And so these seats are really nice. They have the memory function here, which is something you get, I think, on the SEL Premiums, and you also have the heating and a ventilated seat there. And they're really soft and comfortable. They have, you know, a good amount of support, and I really like them. And another thing that I really love, and one of the standout things about the Atlas, is the fact that you get heated and cooled seats as standard on a base bare bones Atlas, which no one else in this segment offers that as standard. And so I mean, at $39,000 as these start at, to have cooled seats and also heated steering wheels thrown in at that base level as well is really impressive, and I think honestly makes a case for the base Atlas being the best value of the bunch and skipping these higher trims. But anyway, yeah, it's just great that you have that same great functionality regardless of what trim you get. These seats are still really nice.
And one thing that I always mention in most of these car reviews is the functionality of the passenger seat. And one thing that I always have gotten annoyed at in the past handful of years is the fact that the passenger seat either doesn't have power controls or it doesn't go up and down and it's at a weird angle, and I just have hated it. But with this car, you can have power controls, and standard, you can go up and down in this seat, and I think that that's really great.
Yeah, so everyone gets good comfort. And also, by the way, even a base Atlas gets leatherette seats. You don't even have cloth seats on a base trim. So, I mean, it's really nice the amount of luxury you have here in this thing as standard. But moving on to the steering wheel here in the Atlas, it's a really great wheel. Nice grip on it here with the 9-3 grip. And I like that it does have physical buttons. They didn't go for the capacitive touch weird thing that a lot of other Volkswagens have that are glossy and look terrible. This just has normal old-fashioned buttons on it. Works great. Have a little paddle shifters here on the back of the wheel. And yeah, no complaints with the steering wheel whatsoever. The gauges here are fully digital as standard. It's a 10.3-inch display, and they work fine. If I'm going to nitpick, I can say that most of the other competitors offer about 12-inch digital gauges, so these are a little small looking compared to everything else we've been in recently. but I mean, they still work great, still nice and high resolution. I love the customization of them as well. You can change not only the color, but you can also go over and change the right and the left pods there to have whatever information you want, in addition to the info you have there in the middle. And you can have a map view there in the middle that looks really pretty. And so, I mean, just really good with the customization, and I think no one's gonna have any complaints with these gauges. You also here on these upper trims have a head-up display, which is nice to have. And coming over though to this infotainment system, that is again the big thing. Now, this is one good thing, is it is standard, and it's a 12-inch screen as standard, which is one of the biggest standard screens in this segment. So they have that going for them. And I also will say that the wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto that it has worked flawlessly every time. It connected every time, quickly and immediately, and that's something that's not a guarantee in other vehicles that have wireless connectivity, and some don't even have it still, like the Palisade and the Telluride don't have wireless CarPlay. So it has some strong suits to it, and I will give credit where credit is due. The thing, though, that's the problem is if you are ever out of your CarPlay or Android Auto, Volkswagen's whole menu structure is a little convoluted, and even just going into radio stations, you have to first say you want, you know, Sirius XM, then you have to say you want a pop station, and then it presents the pop stations instead of just listing the stations in chronological order like you get from any other, you know, a radio system. It's just kind of weird the way they have this set up, and just unnecessary complexity. And, you know, climate controls and stuff are pretty easy. You do have these little shortcut capacitive touch buttons down here that will bring up, you know, the climate controls and all that. So it's not the end of the world, but again, it's just an extra tap or two typically to get into that stuff. And there's been a lot of hate directed at this infotainment system, but after living with it here in the Atlas, and also living with it in a GTI and a Golf R and a bunch of other Volkswagens in the past, it's really not the end of the world, especially if you are someone who, again, uses that smartphone integration a lot. But even if you don't, you know, it's not that bad going through radio stations. And I think if you really like the streamlined appearance here and you like the Atlas a lot, I don't think you should let this infotainment system be a deal breaker. I think it's something you can get used to, and I have people I know who've owned Volkswagens with this system say you get used to it, it's not the end of the world. So it might be off-putting at first, but if you really love this vehicle, don't let it get in the way, because I think it is more functional than I think a lot of people give it credit for. I mean, I will say this volume slider is kind of annoying. I'd still love a normal volume knob, but you do have volume controls here on the steering wheel, so at least for the driver, you have a little bit of a workaround there.
And it's also ever so slightly tilted towards the driver, but it's not so much so that it's annoying to the passenger to have to get to anything. The passenger can still get to everything, so I think it's totally fine.
Yeah, and it's also nice to put the volume slider in the middle there, so it's equal reach for driver and passenger. And then moving on to the storage spaces here in the Atlas, they did a really good job here and really did a nice job of reconfiguring this interior up front here for more storage. So first off, in the doors, you'll see your usual pockets, but in the middle here, you have this new under cubby thing, and it's really massive. You can fit, you know, like a handbag, you know, larger things in there, and it's really nice and wide open too. A lot of others have this kind of thing, but it's a really narrow opening. It's hard to get into. This is really wide open and really easy to access. You also have a wireless phone charger, 2 USB-C jacks there. You have your cup holders and another little bonus space here, which was a perfect size for my sunglasses case. So really nice that you have, you know, some extra spaces there. And I also do like this little shifter. I like that it's so small that it doesn't get in the way, but it's still a physical shifter, so it's not the buttons that everyone hates, but it really frees this up so you don't have anything getting in the way like you have with a big clunky shifter that some of the other competitors use.
Yes, but once again, the piano black plastic is still here, and right now the sun is shining on it, and I see one scratch and loads of dust. So if you love that, just go for it. I just don't think it's very aesthetically pleasing. So you can figure out if you like that or not.
Yeah, and one thing that you most likely will not like is this engine start stop button is painted silver. You might think, what's the big deal about that? But I was driving on the highway today, and the sun was just at the perfect angle to be shining on that, and it was like blasting me in the face with a reflection. So I wish that would have been painted black like everything else down here to, you know, make it a little less reflective, but minor nitpicks, and not the end of the world. You also have this really nice and softly padded center armrest. It is insanely plush, and you open that up and you have a really large space. This is a good bit larger than a lot of the other competitors. It's really wide. You also have another USB-C jack in there. And speaking of plushness, I also have to say that you have some new padding here right by the center tunnel. And it's really great to have. It goes the full length of this console, which is also rare. Some others stop in weird places. This has padding all the way through. It's nice and soft, and it's really nice to rest your knee on. A lot of other competitors are like, oh, we're going to go for the rugged thing and have hard plastic there. And that's not very pleasant whenever you have, you know, cruise control on and you're just resting your leg or something. And so having the padding, it's a minor thing, but honestly, I think it's a really huge improvement in my opinion, and I'm really glad that it has it. It certainly puts it beyond some of the other competitors now as far as interior plushness goes. And the last thing to mention up front here is that you have a Harman Kardon stereo here in this very top trim. It's a 12-speaker, 400-watt stereo. It's nice to have. I haven't sampled the bass one to see what that's like, but just keep that in mind. You're going to have to go up the higher trims for that, and you know, it is nice to have a branded stereo upgrade and something a little bit better than like the Beats audio that you've had in the past from Volkswagen, and so it sounds pretty good. It's not amazing. It's not the best stereo in this segment. I think the Mazda CX-90 still takes the crown there, but you know, still nice to have a stereo upgrade nonetheless. But moving on to the back seat here in the Atlas. First off, we'll start in the second row here, which is very nice and spacious. This one has the 3 across bench. You can get captain's chairs on everything except the base model, but this one is equipped here, you know, fully loaded top of line model with a bench in the middle. Some others don't offer that and force you into captain's chairs, so it's really great you have that. This is still only a 7-seater vehicle though. The third row only seats 2. Some others do seat 3, so keep that in mind depending on how many people you want to carry in this. But it's a really nice, comfortable second row there. You also have this great view of this massive moonroof, which actually does open up. Some others in this segment don't always open up. This one opens, it has a sunshade, and it's really great to have. Also, when they look forward, you'll see they have their own air vents down here in the center armrest. Some others have them in the roof. It's nice that you have it here in the Atlas right there, so it's a little more eye level. You also have tri-zone climate control as standard, so they have their own climate controls back there, even again on that base model. Again, further driving home the point, that base model I think is the one to get. But great you have that. You also have heated seats here in the rear, and it's nice you get that, but a lot of other vehicles that compete with this do have cooled second row seats. The Telluride, Palisade, and Grand Highlander all give you cooled seats at this same price point, and so it just seems odd this is the same price and you get less stuff than those 3 offer. And you also have some power outlets there, 2 USB-C jacks, and then the regular house plug there, but great to have all of that. And you also, in the second row doors there, you have tons of pockets. There's several different pockets there. I think they probably take the cake for the most pockets in a door in a 3-row crossover. It's just a ton of stuff down there. And you also will see they have sunshades there in the second row seats, which is great too. And then moving on to the third row here in the Atlas, it is really a good amount of space. Now, getting into the third row isn't as easy as some of the best out there. Again, the Palisade, the Telluride, and the Pilot offer a button that springs that seat forward. You don't have that here in this, but what I can say is that the spring is really aggressive, so that as long as you can physically lift up the lever there, it does most of the work for you. If you want the widest opening, you're gonna have to shove it a little bit more and use a little more muscle, but it should be fairly easy for kids that are tall enough to reach that latch there. But again, I still think that the Telluride, Palisade, and Pilot do a better job of having buttons, both not only at the top, but also down on the bottom of the seat for little kids to be able to get that seat out of the way all on their own. But anyway, once you're in that third row there, I'm 5'9", me sitting behind where I would have the second row seat either fully back or fully forward. Either way, you still have plenty of space back there in that third row. And that's really impressive because a lot of other vehicles in this segment still struggle with that, and you'll have your knees digging into the seat back. Even the Palisade and the Telluride are a little tight whenever you have that second row slid all the way back. This still gives you a little bit of wiggle room there, and so it's impressive the amount of space. You also will see they have air vents right there at head level in that third row, which is something you don't also always get in most of the other competitors. There's also USB-C jacks back there, lots of little pockets and cup holders, and just a really well done third row, I think. And also getting back to the second row, having it in those various different positions can provide more or less space in that third row. But I also have to say that me sitting behind myself with my driver's seat in the position it's normally in, again being 5'9", even with the second row seat slid all the way forward as much as it'll go to give that third row as much space as possible, I still have about an inch of legroom to spare. And then, there's, of course, many adjustability levels in between to have it fit exactly however much space you need. But it's really cool. The one other thing I will add is that the Atlas, one of the big selling points for these is the fact that the second row does slide forward with a car seat in place. You can still have the car seat in there, and it will keep that position. A lot of others will collapse that seat back. This keeps the seat back stiff so that you can still have your safely mounted car seat there, get it out of the way to have someone slide into the back there. It's not a huge opening when you do that because these seats are huge, of course, these baby seats, but it is just still a nice little bit of extra practicality that some of the others don't offer in this segment, and one of the big Atlas selling points here over the years. So I just wanted to point that out as well. That's still here in the new one. And lastly, moving on to the cargo space here in the Atlas, it is really well done. I mean, back in 2018 they had one of the largest cargo spaces in this segment already, and so that's why they didn't need to change it here for this refreshed Atlas, because it still is really basically towards the top of the pack as far as cargo space back there. It's a very wide, very long space, and you'll see you have nice deep pockets there on the left and on the right. You have a little power outlet back there, and also like you have little grocery hooks there on the right hand side, which is a nice touch. And then the great thing too, you lift up the floor, and unfortunately with this one having the Harman Kardon stereo, you just have a subwoofer there, so you don't really have any extra storage. But beneath that subwoofer, if you pull back there, you will see there is still a spare tire, which is great. You still have a spare and all the related accessories there to change a flat tire. Great that you still have that here, and they retained that in the Atlas. And so overall, just a really good amount of cargo space. I also love how that cargo floor area does just pull right out, so you can dust it off really easily. But I do have to add though that it is missing that underfloor cargo space that most of the other competitors do offer. Like the Telluride and the Palisade have like a huge duffel bag size thing under there, and you miss out on that here in the Atlas. So just one thing to keep in mind there. But anyway, that's all of our thoughts here on the 2024 Atlas interior. Overall, again, I think they did a really good job upgrading this interior. And as long as, getting rid of the climate controls isn't a deal breaker for you, I think that this is one of the plushest interiors in this segment. I mean, there's a lot of stiff competition these days. I still think the CX-90 is plusher. I think the Grand Highlander is right up there with this now in those fully loaded versions. The Palisade and the Telluride are still very nice in their top versions. So I don't think this is best in class necessarily, unless, again, you go for that base trim. I think that base trim with the cooled seats as standard, heated steering wheel standard, that's going to be unbeatable. But if you're going beyond the base trim, I think, like I said, you get more stuff with some of the other competitors. Like a Palisade even gives you a heated third row for the same money. So if you start cross-shopping, it kind of falls apart here at these upper trim levels. But if you stick for the lower trim levels, I think it's a really solid value. And overall, I think they did a really good job here updating the Atlas interior to make it super competitive, and it's really nice. So anyway, that's all of our thoughts here on the 2024 Atlas. Let us know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Be sure to watch that driving review for all our thoughts on how this drives, kind of fuel economy I got, and everything else. I talk also more about the competition there in that video as well. But thank you all very much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe as well to keep these videos coming, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Take care.